Statistically, the probability of maintaining your current standard of living into late retirement is declining. This is not a failure of personal discipline, but a feature of the current monetary architecture. To survive the system, one must first understand the mechanics of its necessary decay. The fundamental unit of account, the currency, is designed to lose value. Central banks globally target a 2% annual inflation rate as a minimum. While this sounds nominal, over a 40-year career, a steady 2% inflation reduces the purchasing power of a currency unit by over 50%. This is the baseline hurdle for any individual. If your capital is not growing faster than the expansion of the money supply, you are technically experiencing a loss of wealth, regardless of the nominal balance in your account. We must distinguish between nominal gains and real purchasing power. In a fractional reserve system, money is created through the issuance of debt. When a bank makes a loan, it creates a corresponding deposit. This means the vast majority of money in the system is actually a liability that must be paid back with interest. However, the interest to pay back those loans is never created by the initial loan itself. This creates a structural necessity for constant new debt issuance to prevent systemic collapse. For the individual, this means the system requires perpetual growth to remain stable, creating a high volatility environment for those nearing the end of their productive years. When new money enters the system, it does not distribute evenly. Those closest to the source of money creation, large financial institutions and governments, receive the new currency first, before it has caused prices to rise. By the time this money reaches the average consumer, prices for assets and goods have already adjusted upward. This is known as the Cantillon effect. It explains why asset prices, such as stocks and real estate, often decouple from the underlying economic reality of wages. To avoid losing ground, capital must be positioned in assets that benefit from this early-stage liquidity. Taxation is a significant but often miscalculated friction in wealth preservation. Most tax codes favor capital over labor, yet many individuals remain stuck in high-tax labor categories. Furthermore, capital gains taxes are often levied on nominal gains, not real gains. If an asset increases by 10% in value while inflation is 10%, your real gain is zero, yet you may still owe taxes on that nominal 10% increase. This creates a negative real return scenario that can quietly liquidate a retirement portfolio over decades. Understanding the tax efficiency of different asset classes is therefore a survival requirement. Many consider a primary residence or physical gold as ultimate safety. However, these assets carry significant carry costs, including property taxes, insurance, and storage. In a high inflation environment, these maintenance costs also inflate. An asset that does not produce cash flow to cover its own carry costs can become a liability during periods of economic contraction. If you are forced to sell an illiquid asset during a market downturn to cover living expenses, the structural loss can be catastrophic. True financial stability requires balancing illiquid stores of value with high-velocity cash-flowing assets. The financial systems of the 20th century were built on a demographic pyramid, with a broad base of young workers supporting a small number of retirees. That pyramid has inverted. As the dependency ratio increases, the burden on the productive economy grows. This leads to higher taxation, reduced social benefits, and a reliance on further currency debasement to meet unfunded sovereign obligations. Relying on state-managed pension systems or social safety nets assumes that the current demographic and debt trends will reverse, which is statistically unlikely. Personal solvency must be decoupled from institutional solvency. Traditionally, government bonds were considered the risk-free rate. However, when interest rates rise to combat inflation, the market value of existing bonds falls. For an individual holding long-dated debt, this creates significant price volatility in what was supposed to be a stable portion of their portfolio. In a regime of high debt and fluctuating inflation, no asset is truly low risk. Risk has not been eliminated, it has been transformed and hidden. Understanding that safety is often just a delayed form of risk is essential for navigating the next decade of market transitions. Most developed nations are currently operating at debt-to-GDP ratios exceeding 100%. When the cost of servicing this debt exceeds the rate of economic growth, the only mathematical options are default, austerity, or financial repression. Financial repression involves keeping interest rates below the rate of inflation to effectively inflate the debt away. This is a hidden tax on savers. In this scenario, the system survives by transferring wealth from the holders of currency and debt to the issuers of debt. Positioning oneself outside of the direct line of this transfer is the primary challenge of modern capital preservation. Passive investing has become the dominant strategy, leading to a high concentration of capital in a few massive entities. This creates a feedback loop where the largest companies receive the most capital, regardless of their fundamental health. While this drives prices up in the short term, it creates a fragile market structure where a single point of failure can trigger systemic cascades. True diversification is becoming harder to achieve as all asset classes become increasingly correlated with central bank liquidity. To avoid being caught in a systemic failure, one must look for assets with low correlation to the central bank's balance sheet.